itself with shouting or tears. Mine crept in quietly, disguised as routine. Every morning started the same way. Alarm at 6:10. Coffee brewed strong enough to sting the nose. My wife, Lauren Pierce, sat at the kitchen island scrolling through her phone, smiling at something that never seemed to involve me. She'd hum under her breath while I packed my lunch, a soft sound that used to feel comforting. Lately, it felt rehearsed. We'd been married 8 years. 8 solid, ordinary years. No dramatic fights. No explosive arguments. Just a slow drift I couldn't explain. She'd started dressing sharper for work. New blazers, different perfume, heels she never wore before. When I noticed, she laughed it off. Trying to feel confident again, she'd say. That's allowed, right? I told myself not to overthink it. But patterns don't lie. She began leaving earlier and coming home later. Her phone never left her hand. Not on the couch. Not in the shower. Not even when she slept. If I walked into a room unexpectedly, her screen went dark in a heartbeat. I wasn't jealous by nature. I worked in logistics, long hours, predictable days. I liked order. I liked facts. And the facts were stacking up in ways I didn't like. One evening, while she was showering, her laptop chimed from the dining table. Not a text, an email notification. The subject line flashed briefly before the screen dimmed. Can't stop thinking about today. No sender name, just initials, MH. I didn't touch the computer. I didn't read further. I just sat there, heart thudding, staring at the blank screen like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. That night, she crawled into bed and kissed my cheek, distracted, distant. Long day, she murmured. I stared at the ceiling long after she fell asleep, replaying every small moment I'd ignored over the past few months. The canceled weekends, the sudden privacy, the way she'd started accusing me of being distant whenever I tried to connect. Over the next 2 weeks, I paid closer attention. I noticed how she angled her phone away from me, how she took calls in the garage, how one name, Mark Holloway, kept appearing on her calendar under vague labels like review or check-in. Mark worked in her department. Mid-level management. Married. 2 kids, if I remember correctly. I'd met him once at a company holiday party. Firm handshake. Polite smile. The kind of man people trust without questioning why. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started documenting. Dates. Times. Changes in behavior. Screenshots of shared calendars. Expense reimbursements that didn't add up. I told myself I was just protecting my sanity. Then came the night, everything shifted. We were eating dinner, takeout, untouched again, when I asked calmly, "Are you happy?" She froze, fork hovering midair. What kind of question is that? The honest kind. She exhaled sharply, irritation flashing across her face like I'd inconvenienced her. And that's when she leaned back, crossed her arms, and said it. That she felt watched. That I was hovering. That she needed breathing room. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I nodded. And that's when she made her first mistake. Once Lauren said she needed distance, she started acting like she'd been unchained. The house went quiet in a way that felt intentional. She stopped asking when I'd be home. Stopped mentioning her schedule. Some nights she didn't come back until after midnight, slipping into bed like a guest instead of a partner. When I asked where she'd been, she didn't hesitate. Work ran late. You wouldn't understand. It's complicated. That line became her shield. You wouldn't understand. So I stopped trying to. Instead, I watched. I noticed how her routines changed the moment she thought I'd step back. Her phone, once guarded, now lived face up on the counter, still locked, but handled with less panic. She took longer showers, started humming again. Not the old, comfortable tune, but something lighter, almost excited. She thought space meant safety. It didn't. One afternoon, while she was out, I remembered something small, but important. Lauren had synced her tablet to our shared cloud years ago and never bothered to disconnect it. I hadn't touched it out of respect. That day, respect finally ran out. I opened it with steady hands. Messages populated slowly, one conversation standing out. No explicit words. No dramatic declarations. Just fragments. Inside jokes. Late-night check-ins. Casual familiarity that didn't belong to coworkers. Mark, today felt different. You okay? Lauren, yeah, just relieved. Mark, good. I hate seeing you stressed. There it was. Emotional closeness disguised as concern. I scrolled carefully, documenting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, shared calendar invites that didn't match her work hours. Lunch meetings logged as internal reviews that stretched 3 hours long. It wasn't reckless passion. It was calculated intimacy. And that hurt more. I learned their pattern fast. Mondays and Thursdays were their favorites. Off-site meetings. Quiet restaurants near the river. Places that didn't ask questions. Mark always paid. Lauren always stayed late. I also learned something else. Mark wasn't as careful as he thought. One evening, Lauren left her work bag by the door. Her phone buzzed inside it. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. The preview notification was enough. HR finalized the restructuring. If anything comes up, I've got you. That wasn't romantic. That was dangerous. I sat down at the kitchen table and breathed through the ache in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal of trust anymore. It was abuse of power. Mark wasn't just crossing a line. He was leveraging his position. I didn't confront Lauren. Not yet. Instead, I started learning Mark Holloway's life. He'd been married 15 years. 2 kids in middle school. His wife, Rebecca, ran a small interior design business. Their social media was curated perfection. Vacations, family dinners, smiling holiday cards. But I knew better now. I waited another week, letting them get comfortable. Lauren grew bolder. She stopped hiding her smile when she read messages. Started picking fights with me over nothing. Dishes, tone, timing, anything to justify her distance. One night she snapped, "You're always watching me. It's exhausting." I looked at her calmly. "Then take all the space you need." She blinked, surprised, then nodded, relief washing over her face. That night, she didn't come home. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I made a decision. I requested a consultation with an employment attorney, not to act, just to understand. I laid out the facts without emotion. He listened carefully, then leaned back in his chair. "If what you're saying is accurate," he said, "this isn't just personal. It's professional misconduct. HR would have to act." That word "have" stuck with me. Still, I didn't rush. Revenge done too fast is sloppy. I wanted precision. I compiled everything into a clean, chronological file. No commentary. No assumptions. Just evidence. Messages. Calendar overlaps. Expense reports. Policy excerpts pulled directly from Lauren's company handbook. I also did something harder. I reached out to Rebecca. I didn't accuse. I didn't dramatize. I sent one message, carefully worded. "Hi, Rebecca. I'm Daniel Pierce. This is difficult to send, but I believe you deserve information you may not have. I'm not asking you to respond, only to look." Attached were 3 screenshots. Nothing explicit, just enough. She replied 2 hours later. "Thank you for telling me. I suspected something, but couldn't prove it. I like to talk." We met in a quiet cafe across town. Rebecca was composed, but her hands shook when she wrapped them around her mug. I told her everything. She asked questions. I answered honestly, even when it hurt. She didn't cry. She nodded. "I want the truth," she said, "and I want it documented." We agreed on one thing. No scenes. No shouting. No public meltdowns. Just consequences. By the time Lauren realized something was wrong, it was already in motion. HR received the file on a Tuesday morning. Not anonymously. Properly submitted. Clean. Irrefutable. Rebecca confronted Mark that night. Calmly. With printed screenshots laid out like a timeline. Lauren came home late, flushed, distracted. "You okay?" I asked. She waved me off. "Just tired." 2 days later, she got the email. A formal request to attend a meeting. Mandatory. HR present. She read it twice, then looked at me, confusion flickering across her face. "Do you know what this is about?" I met her eyes, steady and quiet. "You said you needed space," I replied. "I gave it to you." The silence that followed was heavy, and it was just the beginning. The morning of Lauren's HR meeting, the house felt like a courtroom before the verdict. She moved through the kitchen stiffly, coffee untouched, phone clutched so tightly her knuckles were pale. Gone was the confidence she'd worn so easily over the past few weeks. In its place sat something fragile, uncertainty. "You're being strangely calm," she said, watching me from across the counter. "I'm not the one being questioned," I replied, keeping my voice level. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then stopped. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't check it this time. By the time she left, she didn't kiss my cheek. I waited. I didn't pace or check the clock. I went about my day like normal. Emails, calls, lunch at my desk. Control wasn't about dominance. It was about patience, about letting consequences do the talking. At 1:47 p.m., my phone rang. Lauren's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. They know, she said immediately, her voice unsteady. Everything. They had documents, timelines. Daniel, did you do this? I didn't deny it. I told the truth. I said, you can call it whatever you want. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. You went behind my back. You embarrassed me. I almost laughed at that word. Embarrassed, but I didn't. This wasn't about winning an argument. You embarrass yourself, I replied. I just stopped covering for you. She hung up. 2 hours later, she came home early. Her eyes were red. Not from tears, but from fury. She threw her bag onto the couch and faced me like a stranger. You destroyed my career, she said. Mark's being investigated. I'm on leave. Do you understand what you've done? I set my phone down and stood slowly. I understand exactly what I've done. I ended a lie. She scoffed. You couldn't handle that I was happy. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Happiness doesn't require secrecy, I said quietly. It doesn't require protecting another man's messages or rewriting your marriage as a burden. For a moment, she looked small. Then defensive walls snapped back into place. This is your fault, she said. If you hadn't been so distant, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. There was the rewrite. I shook my head. You didn't look. You planned. She stormed past me toward the bedroom, slamming the door. A few minutes later, she emerged with a suitcase. I'm staying with a friend, she said sharply. I can't be here right now. I didn't stop her. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt final. Mark was placed on administrative leave, pending investigation. Rebecca filed for separation. The company moved quickly, too quickly for Lauren to deny how serious it was. Her coworkers stopped texting. Invitations dried up. The silence she once craved now surrounded her completely. She tried to fill it. Late-night messages, long apologies, explanations that sounded rehearsed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He said he'd protect me. I never thought you'd actually do something. That last one stuck with me. She'd mistaken my calm for weakness, my silence for surrender. One evening, she came back to the house without warning. She stood in the doorway, eyes tired, voice softer. I made a mistake, she said. We can fix this. I studied her face. The woman I'd loved was still there somewhere, but buried under months of choices she refused to own. I didn't do this to punish you, I said. I did it to stop lying to myself. She stepped closer. So that's it? 8 years gone. 8 years taught me who I am, I replied, and who I won't be again. She swallowed hard, then nodded, understanding settling in slowly. I never thought you'd be this cold. I met her gaze. I'm not cold. I'm done. She left without another word. That night, I sat alone in the quiet house and felt something unexpected. Relief. Not triumph. Not joy. Just clarity. Revenge hadn't come in shouting or public humiliation. It came in truth, delivered cleanly, without malice. And the quiet afterward, that was the sound of my life finally resetting. The silence after Lauren left didn't feel empty. It felt honest. For the first time in months, I woke up without that tight pressure in my chest, without the instinct to check her location or read into the tone of her voice. The house was still, but it wasn't tense anymore. It was neutral ground. Lauren tried one last time to regain control of the story. 2 weeks after moving out, she sent a long message filled with carefully chosen words. Regret, confusion, promises of therapy, claims that Mark had manipulated her, that she'd felt trapped and lost. It was written like a confession, but it still avoided the one thing that mattered most: accountability. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on myself in ways I hadn't in years. I started running again in the mornings, letting the rhythm of my steps burn away the leftover anger. I cooked real meals instead of grabbing whatever was easiest. I slept deep, uninterrupted sleep that reminded me how exhausted I'd been while trying to save something that no longer existed. The fallout around Lauren continued quietly, just as I'd expected. Her company completed its investigation. Mark resigned before it concluded, a move that spoke louder than any official finding. Lauren wasn't terminated, but she wasn't welcomed back either. Her role was reassigned. Her reputation shifted. Doors that once opened easily now stayed closed. There was no announcement, no apology tour, just consequences. Rebecca and I checked in with each other once more. She sounded steadier than before, still hurt, but grounded. She thanked me again for giving her the truth without drama. That mattered, she said. You let me decide instead of forcing a scene. I understood that more than she knew. One evening, Lauren showed up again, this time calmer. No suitcase, no accusations, just quiet. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure she belonged there anymore. I figured, I replied. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly. I didn't realize how much I'd already checked out until everything collapsed. I didn't interrupt. I thought I was escaping pressure, she continued. But I was just avoiding responsibility. I nodded slowly. That happens. She looked up at me then, eyes searching. Is there any part of you that misses us? I considered the question carefully. Honesty had become non-negotiable. I miss who we were, I said. But I don't miss pretending. That was the moment she finally understood. She exhaled, shoulders slumping, the fight draining out of her. I hope one day you can forgive me. I didn't rush to answer. Forgiveness isn't about going back, I said. It's about letting go. I'm working on that for me. She nodded, tears threatening but held back. Then she stood, walked to the door, and paused. You were stronger than I gave you credit for. I met her gaze. You never really looked. After she left, I locked the door gently. Not out of anger, but closure. Weeks passed, then months. I finalized the separation paperwork without conflict. No drawn-out battles. No petty demands. Just fairness. The way things should end when honesty finally enters the room. Life didn't magically improve overnight. Healing isn't dramatic. It's quiet work done daily. But slowly, I felt like myself again. Not the version constantly doubting his worth, but the man who trusted his instincts. One afternoon, while cleaning out old files on my computer, I found the folder, the screenshots, the timelines, the proof that had once felt so heavy. I stared at it for a long moment before deleting it permanently. I didn't need it anymore. The revenge wasn't the investigation or the fallout. It wasn't the ruined illusions or the quiet disgrace that followed Lauren and Mark. The real victory was this. I didn't beg. I didn't explode. I didn't lose myself trying to keep someone who had already left. I chose truth over comfort, clarity over chaos, respect over denial. And in doing so, I got something far more valuable than revenge. I got my peace back.